Hey, I'm Karl O'Hare, I'm the Awakened Millionaire, and I am someone with a goal.
Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Man, I'm pretty much been looking forward to this, obviously having sat through the course, and I was being introduced by Bryn, a mutual friend of ours. So I want to go into the goodies, but obviously with how you are today, and obviously thank you for inviting us to your beautiful home. But I want to go into your childhood and what was that like, and more so what were you like growing up, as in your mindset and in terms of success and money, and two, how did you evolve to where you are today? So take us back.
Yeah, okay, I'll try and skip the boring bits. Born in 1974 on the Wirral in the UK. So that's the little bit just underneath Liverpool. And pretty much spent most of my life there. Grew up, went to school, went to an all-boys grammar school, and then at 18 fell in love and went to live in Northern Ireland. Actually went there to go to university, but I had no intention of ever going to university.
No intention? What were you going to study?
No, I only took a place in uni so that I could get a student loan from the bank in England to help me survive for the first few months of life in Northern Ireland. But no, so before I carry on from there, yeah, we had a really happy childhood. You know, everything was great.
Where are you in the scale? Are you the eldest, youngest?
I'm the oldest. Then I have my brother Mark, who's 2 years younger than me, and then my sister Ellen, who's about 6 years younger again. And so 3 kids. My dad was around. He used to work in Saudi Arabia for a pathology company, so he'd be away a lot. In the end, he left I was aged 11, so it was just my mum bringing us up. And all I remember is just she just gave us constant love and support. You know, never shouted, or we never experienced any aggression, or So I had a really, even though Dad left when I was 11, I'd still say that I had a blessed childhood. Grammar school. Ended up in Northern Ireland. Ended up working. Left university because it was never really something that I wanted to do. Only really signed up just to get the student loan to keep me alive for a few months. That ran out pretty quick, and then. Actually couldn't get a job.
No?
Couldn't get a job at 18 years old. All the teachers in grammar school, the boys' grammar school, had said, you boys are in the top, what is it, 5% of, all the schools in the UK, and you're going to just do so well. And I think I'd just been brainwashed by the whole system to believe that if you got, 12 GCSEs and 4 A-levels, that you could just walk into any job. And, it was like a big smack in the face, a real quick learning curve, steep learning curve that actually that will only take you so far. I was just turned down by so many, just trying to get the most basic of jobs, low paid jobs. I'm talking like £8,000 a year. No one would give me a job. So I ended up coming back to the UK, skint. I just couldn't survive because I couldn't get a job after a year of being in Northern Ireland. And at the time, my mum had moved out of our family home, but it hadn't sold yet, so I literally just set up shack on my own in 1 bedroom of an empty house. This is at 19 years old. And I was so skint, I had no money, that I phoned the St Vincent de Paul, the charity, St Vincent de Paul, right? So I didn't really know much about them, but someone said I needed furniture, so I said just call St Vincent de Paul. So I called them, and they said, what do you need? I said, well, I need everything. I'm living in an empty house, in 1 room. And so they said, no worries, we'll be there tomorrow. And a huge Arctic lorry backed up our street, only a small street. And the guy knocked on the door and opened the back of the lorry and said, what do you want? And there was beds and tables and chairs and beautiful wardrobes and absolutely everything. I could have furnished my whole house with it, right? And I said, well, I'll just take what I need. So I had a bed and a side table to write my CVs out on, a little chair, and a cupboard for my clothes. I got all that for free. So what an amazing organization that was. I experienced that at 19. And then just applied for jobs. I'd say that's probably the only time in my whole life where I probably got a bit down, mentally, mental health-wise, I think, because I was thinking, hang on a minute, got all these exams, I'm 19, I want to work, and I just can't get a job. What's wrong with that picture, So in the end, an insurance company in Belfast, I'd just applied for a job, and they sent me a letter saying, we'd like to interview you. So I flew back to Northern Ireland, this is at 19 years old, had an interview with the CEO of the insurance company, and got the job. So I moved back to Northern Ireland full time at 19 years old, and worked for an insurance company. Because I didn't go to university, I ended up passing a load of insurance exams to become the most boring person in the room. But I knew a lot about insurance, which helped me kind of slowly just learn that industry.
So you still 19, 20 around this?
So yeah, by the time I left Northern Ireland, I was 21, just turned 21, and I decided that life would be better for me back in the UK. So I moved back, got a transfer with the insurance company, moved back to Liverpool, and then worked away there. So I was just like an insurance clerk, just doing, motor accident claims and commercial business claims, nothing exciting, just a typical 21-year-old, working hard in the week. I'd work hard, take work home with me, even though I didn't have to. I've always been like that. But then go out party at the weekend like most 21-year-olds in the UK, And then at age 24, we were working with a couple of really cool American dudes who would come in from a company called Enterprise Rent-A-Car. It was like an American vehicle rental company, right? They're big in the States, all around the world. And these guys, this one guy called Scott Cassell would come in, and he must have been late 20s, and he was just effervescent. Like, hey man, how are you, Carl? And he seemed to be having so much fun with his job. And I was just working for an insurance company, kind of, I was working hard, enjoying myself, but he seemed to really be enjoying himself. So one day I just said, hey mate, if you've only ever got any jobs at your company, I would love to come and work for you, right? And then the next week I got a phone call from the general manager saying, do you want to have an interview? So I was at 24, went to work for Enterprise Rent-A-Car as a risk and insurance manager there. I'd finished all my insurance exams, so I was like a chartered insurer. It's a bit like being a chartered accountant, but I think a bit higher on the boring level.
I bet it was.
Yeah, honestly, I used to be embarrassed about talking about my job. Yeah, people would say, what do you do? And I'd avoid it because I just didn't want to say, I work in insurance.
The amount of work, were you getting a lot of work with that?
Look, it was just a job, so I'd be dealing with claims and stuff like that, and I'd take the files home and work them at home, trying to stay on top. So I was always work hard and try and do my best, to impress. But it got to a point where I realized I wasn't going to really go anywhere with the company, so I left and went to this American rental company, and they recognized, they called it a meritocracy at the time. So they would openly say, hey man, you work hard for us and we will reward you in position with money. And they did, so I ended up running the Southeast region, the London region, in the job that I did, which was, I guess at that time, on my ladder, kind of the highest place that I could get to with what I was doing. I had a load of friends, really enjoyed the job. And that went on till I was 30. So nothing, it wasn't really lighting up the world. I'd had a few ideas along the way, and towards the end of that job, the way sometimes if you have an idea for a business in your head, right, you're just about to start one. So I would sit and we'd have a little, at the time I was with Susie, my then fiance, and we'd sit and have a drink, every now and again at night. And mine would be a Jim Beam and Coke with ice, and we'd just sit and she'd have a glass of wine. I'd say, you know what, I've got an idea for this business. I've got an idea and this is how I can see it working. And she'd say, you should do it. But it took me 2 years of having those conversations before, and a few events that kind of, the universe kind of pushed me to decide that I had to leave my job and start my own business. That was in 2000 and the end of 2005.
By this time you're 30?
Yeah, 30, pretty much 30.
So prior to that, Karl, because you got my interest, prior to that you had no entrepreneurship, you didn't do a lemonade stand or the traditional, you weren't entrepreneurial?
No, and this is the thing, because I kind of got spat out of school, I talk about it, and I got almost brainwashed to a point where I believed that I would just walk out of school, put a suit on, wear a briefcase, and be a business person. And there was a movie that I watched, right? I would have been about 12 or 13 years old, and it's got Michael J. Fox in it, and it's called The Secret to My Success. You ever seen it?
I haven't seen it, I haven't heard of it.
So it's a story about Michael J. Fox, and I can't remember if he comes from the country or whatever, but anyway, he starts with this big company, and he has a dream, and he starts in the post room, right? And just delivering posts to people. And it's comedy, right? And in the end, he ends up almost running the company, the top executive, you know, and it's funny. It's a great movie. I remember watching that and thinking, I could do that, you know. And then that kind of instilled in me. Honestly, it was that movie that instilled in me the belief that I could start at the bottom and work my way to the top. Yeah. So when I left school, I honestly just bounced into the workplace, so positive, you know. I'll do anything, you know, because I believed that I could just work from the bottom. Start at the bottom and work my way to the top. Yeah. And that kind of worked up until age 30. Look, I wasn't killing it financially. I wasn't earning hundreds of thousands of pounds, you know. At the time, my salary probably was about 42, 43,000 pounds, you know. So, and that was in London. So literally that just paid for where I lived and, you know, to eat. You know, you have to earn a huge amount of money in London to really enjoy life there, or at least enjoy an extravagant life. So I worked and worked and worked and worked to get to this point. And at the time I was working, the standard hours for the rental company were 8 to 6 every day.
8 to 6 every day.
Yeah, and we would work longer than that. We'd be working till 10 at night because we really, me and the team, you know, because we cared about what we were doing. And one day someone said, have you ever thought, someone that didn't work 8 to 6, someone that worked 9 to 5, they said, Karl, have you ever stopped to think that those extra 2 hours a day that you're working in a whole month is like working a whole extra working week than a normal person does? So normal people work 9 to 5 over 5 days, 4 weeks, but just that extra 2 hours makes up a whole extra working week in the month.
And you're adding that to your workload.
That was just normal. Yeah. For all the guys that were working for that company, we were doing more than that, you know. Yet, I reached an earnings cap point where I realized, hang on a minute, no matter how hard I work now, even if I get the top job in Europe, even if I get the top job in the world for what I do, in America somewhere, I'm only going to be earning maybe a couple of £100,000, if that. And what does that get you? I'm not knocking people that earn that because it's a great wage, right? But that gets you a nice house, still with a mortgage, right? Yeah. And I kind of knew inside of me that I wanted more than that. So for me, it became very black and white. Yeah. That was a moment where it was black and white. If I stay here, I know this is going to be my life for the next 20 years. Hands down. There's, you know, I know that because no one's ever, and I listened to a podcast around about that date called The Bottom Line with Evan Davis. He's the guy that does Dragon's Den in the UK. Yeah, it's a bit like Shark Tank in Australia. Yeah. And there was a millionaire guy on his podcast. And I was just listening, driving my car or whatever I was doing, and the millionaire guy said one thing. He said, at the end of the day, Evan, you got to remember that no employer is ever going to pay you £1 million.
And that hit you.
And it just hit me. And I thought, gee, you're right. Yeah. No one's ever going to give me £1 million. No one's ever going to pay me that. Why? Because I'm working for them, right? It's their business. So as soon as I kind of realized that, it became black and white for me. Yeah. And it was like, okay, I need to leave my job and do my own thing because the fear of staying in that situation, that and knowing what life was going to be like for the next 20 years and knowing I would never have that life that I wanted was way bigger than the fear of me starting a new business and all that entailed.
That new venture. So let's talk to me about because you come across as very self-aware. You know that this is what I want, and I know that if I stay here, I'm not going to be I'm not going to be happy, but there's more in me that I have to offer, right? So I just want to if we can just dissect that. Karl, how did you become so self-aware? Was it an opportunity where you just reflected and say, you know what, or were you put in a position where you were, jeopardized your position and say, hey, and then you thought, you know what, I can take ownership of my own situation? What sparked that?
Yes, yeah. There's a couple of occasions. So, and they're in my childhood. Actually, as I've looked back and been there and found those places and dealt with them, because they actually caused quite a bit of trauma, which I wasn't aware of until literally a couple of years ago when it all came out. So when I was 11, I have a memory. I have a memory of my dad walking out the door and saying literally goodbye to his family. My mum crying, please don't go. That kind of experience. And I was standing in the hall watching it, and I remember as he left. I made the decision as an 11-year-old boy that I had to be strong for mum.
Gotcha.
right? And to me, that instantly just put a mask up in front of myself. And my mum said that she used to try and make me cry. She said, and she couldn't make me cry, for years. So I just adopted this, I'm gonna have to just be strong for mum, right? And it's called, my mate's a psychologist, and he said that's actually, it's a thing. It's called something like superhero syndrome or something like that, when a child sees their parent go through trauma and then decides at a very early age that they've got to protect that parent, even though it's ridiculous because they're a child. And then they'll spend their whole life with the goal of freeing or protecting that parent. And that's pretty much what happened to me. My goal was to get to a point where I could just look after my mum and she didn't have to worry about anything, financially or otherwise. And but subconsciously that was there. I wouldn't talk about that, but that's what I took on at age 11, which was I'm just going to have to do this on my own, because mum couldn't help me. She was a nursery nurse. We had no real money to do anything. I had no other people of influence in my life that were going to give me or give it to me, And then the second experience was at age 15, around about that 15, 16. Remember, I think I wanted like a second-hand motorbike or something like this, and I needed £200, right, to buy this. I won't swear, but it was a complete heap of a motorcycle, no front brake, but I just wanted to buy it because, I wanted it. I was 15, so I would have been 16, 17. And I phoned my dad. I remember I was sitting on the stairs in our family home, no one else was in, and I phoned my dad. I think he was in Australia at the time, moved from Saudi to Australia. And I would hardly speak to my dad, right? Every 6 months or a year or whatever. And I asked him for money. I said, hey, Dad, it's Karl here, can I have whatever it was, say £200? And he said no. And he said no, because and what happened with that dynamic was I felt entitled to that money. I felt, well, because you left our family and caused all that pain that we've all been going through, when I ask you for something, years later, you must give it to me because you must feel so guilty and it's all your fault. All that went on, right? So I just felt entitled. He's going to give me the money because of this and that. And he just said, no, I'm not going to give it to you. I can't remember what the reason was. I'm sure he was trying to teach me something at the time. And I remember putting the phone down and crying, just burst into tears crying, on my own. My dad doesn't want to give me any money. And at that moment, I actually said out loud, it sounds quite sad when I say this, but you asked the question, so this is the answer, right? And as I was crying, I remember blubbering and I actually said out loud, I'm never going to ask anyone for anything ever again.
And you're 15?
16, yeah. And now I look back and that's actually a very sad thing for a 16-year-old to say, because I then built on top of the mask or the shield that I put in front of myself at age 11 and built a thicker wall around me at age 15, 16. And then that pretty much just set my mentality from that stage, which is my mum can't help me, she hasn't got any money, no one in my life is going to give anything to me, the cavalry isn't coming to save me, and if I want all of this stuff, I'm going to have to do it myself. And then that literally, that's it, and to this day, I still struggle to take, I'd never ask for help, I still struggle to ask other people for help.
Yeah, just hard. Thanks for sharing that, Karl, because I find that as a common theme with all entrepreneurs who are scared to ask for help. I'm a one-man band, I'm the lone wolf, as they say. But would you say in your case back then, was that good in a way, given the circumstances, to where you are today? Did that, I know, in reflection back, when looking back to it now, you may think it's bad, but at the time, with your back against the wall,
From an entrepreneurial drive point of view, it was fantastic because I never once blamed anyone for anything that went right or wrong, ever.
It was all on you.
Yeah, and what added to that is I read a book at when I started my business by a guy called Duncan Bannatyne, Bannatyne I think his name is, a big multimillionaire in the UK, and he was on Dragon's Den. I think my wife had bought me the book, starting out in business, and he was telling a story about how he created an empire with ice cream vans and then health clubs and everything else. And one thing that I took from the book, he said, when you're an entrepreneur, you need to understand that no matter what happens, good or bad in your business, it's your fault. It's your fault. And if you accept that, then it brings great happiness, you know, and relief, because you're not blaming other people for your successes or your failures. Because ultimately, if I employ you and you stuff up, it's my fault for not teaching you the right way to be, right? You know. So yeah, personal experiences, and then I learned a bit along the way, that everything that was going to happen to me was my fault, whether it was good or bad. And that stuck with me the whole way through.
Gotcha. So with that, so you got the drive, and obviously those circumstances.
But if you don't mind me jumping in, sure. But the flip side of that, which I didn't realize until last year, right, which was the awakened bit of all that, was, I'll give you another example of another pivotal moment in my personality that I think has helped along the way, but also caused issues later on. So with that American rental company that I used to work for, I was probably only there for a year. And I was like most people. I was happy, happy, pleasant kind of guy. I'd say hello to everyone in the morning. But I wouldn't even say I was super enthusiastic. And then one day, a guy called Pete DeFrank, I've told this story a couple of times, a guy called Pete DeFrank, he looked like Jim Carrey. That's how I remember him, right? And he was like a big manager, a big American manager. And I heard him before I saw him. And he'd come in, he's like, hey, Quentin, how are you, man? He's larger than life. And he came to me. And at the time, I think I was tired, so I was and he knocked me on my shoulder. He said, "You're Karl, right?" And I said, "Yeah, hi." He said, "I'm Pete DeFrank." He said, "Karl," he said, "How are you, man?" And I said, "I'm okay, I'm all right. Thanks for asking. How are you, Pete?" And he did this, and he stood up, and he opened his arms wide like this and said, "Man," big white American teeth. He said, "Man, I'm fantastic." And I looked at him like this and went, whoa. I was like 24, 25 years old. And I looked at him and said, oh my God, wow, never met anyone like you. Yeah. And again, internally, in that moment, I went, right, every time anyone ever asks me how I am in my life from now on, I'm going to do that. Yeah. And I did. So for the next, 15 years or whatever, until last year, people would say, how are you? And it wouldn't matter what mood I was in. Yeah. I would say, I'm fantastic. Yeah. Yeah. And that then also shaped, I just became that guy that was always fantastic. And I brainwashed myself, honestly, over 20 years to always believe that I was always fantastic. I always felt fantastic. Of course, that's not real, right? Yeah. But I had brainwashed myself over so many years to believe that I was just always fantastic. Susie would call me Constant Karl. Never gets angry, never gets in a mood, never upset, constantly okay, right? So the downside to all of that, the upside is it helps in managing staff because I'm always happy, I'm always upbeat, I'm never down, always motivational, inspirational, vision, I'm fantastic, right? But the downside personally of that was that when you put yourself in a space, in a mental space, where you're telling yourself that you're always okay, so effectively what you're doing then is saying, well, I'm always happy, which means I can never be sad. I can never feel sadness, right? I can never feel extreme anger. I can never feel extreme sadness. I can maybe not even feel extreme love because I'm always just okay. Yeah. And that's pretty much a space that I put myself in for years and years and years. And last year, along my journey in life, all of that got cracked open. The mask came off, the shield came off, and all of the emotions that I'd been bottling up for years and years and years just started to pour out of me, which then became a big part of my journey from then on. So yeah, from a business perspective, it helped no end, because constant positivity, I'm fantastic, all the time through problems, doesn't matter, constant motivation, that I was that guy, but then subconsciously over years, I think it was robbing me of feeling a lot of true emotions that you're supposed to feel as a human,
Gotcha. So talk to me about that, Karl. So obviously 20 years of training yourself to obviously exude this persona, and I don't know how you do it, because people ask me if I'm down, but I try to carry this. You try and carry it obviously for the team or for your family, and you've tried the bravado and the I think it all comes down to ego, trying to build that up. So how did you pretty much just unpack all that or untrain yourself and talk to me about that?
It was all thanks to my beautiful wife, Susie. So it was March of 2019. So this is only last year. And Susie, for Christmas, had bought me a, ticket's the wrong word, a course, a men's work course, right? I'd never done any men's work. I'd never sat in front of other men or anyone and talked about my feelings, right? So probably like most men, I grew up in a group of, of all boys school, so all you do is just take the mickey out of each other and wind each other up, and the minute you try and get serious about how you feel, if you ever allow that to come out, you're instantly just beaten down with insults, right? So that's part of growing up as in the UK, so, but most men, I think. So, and I had all this stuff about my dad leaving and everything, and I would say, I'm fantastic, what are you talking about? It's fine, I'm cool, it's great, no problems. But Susie knew that I had a lot of emotion in me that needed to come out, right? We'd been together 20 years, and she just knew me better than myself, actually. So she bought this course, and it was with Tim Morrison. Tim Morrison's an amazing spiritual leader, a hell of a guy, looks like a Viking. And he runs these courses called Invictus. So my wife had bought me this ticket for this course. We started in March and December for Christmas, didn't tell me. And then a week before the course started, she said, baby, I've got you on this course. And I said, what is it? She said, oh, it's an 8-week journey. Every Tuesday you go and you share about your feelings and how you feel and all this stuff, right? And I just said, no, I'm not. There's no way that I am going.
Are you serious?
I was like, no way am I going sitting in a room with other men who've got problems. I've got no problems. Sorry, I've got no problems. I was like, look at me, look around. I've got no problems. I'm fantastic, right? And I created brainwashed myself so much to believe that I had no problems and I did not need to go and sit in a room and talk about my feelings, right? I don't need to do that. That's for weak people. That's for men who are weak, right? And that's honestly how I thought, to be honest, right? I'm not doing that. I actually swore and said, get lost. She said, please go. I paid a lot of money for it, right? So I said, okay. And the first night I went there, and there was 18 men there. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh no, and there's a semicircle of men. We sat there, and we all talked about why we were in the room. And I was halfway in the semicircle. And some of these guys, I perceived to have real problems. They started talking, and I was thinking, oh my God, that guy's got problems. And the next one had worse problems than the first guy. And then the third one was really bad. And I was thinking, geez, I've got nothing here. I've got nothing to say. And I was embarrassed that I felt like I'm going to look like I'm some kind of shallow fake here in this room full of people that have got real issues to deal with. And the only thing that came up, and Tim said, look, just say what you think, Karl. And I said, okay, I guess since I sold my business, a couple of years ago, I've kind of felt like I've got a bit of a hole in my life, or myself. I said, and I had started to ask the question, is this it? Because I was constantly asking the question, is this it? This is before the course. I've got the house with beautiful wife, kids, and the fast car in the garage and shiny watches. But I was still asking, is this it? Is that it? I'm 40 here, 41. Is that all you do? You just do that, and then is that all I am? Just a person that goes and makes a bit of money, runs a business, buys a house, has kids. Is that it? Surely, I was asking the question, is this it? And even Susie had said to me, which was hard to swallow, she said, are you okay? And I asked the question, I said, yeah, I'm thinking, is this it? She said, what do you mean, is this it? And she actually said, are we not enough? Are me and the kids and your life and everything, are we not enough? I said, no. It's not enough. I know that might come across as being, I said, no, it's not. I love you, I love everything, but I've still got this hole, which I don't know what it is, but it's a feeling that's there. So I just said, look, there's a hole there, something missing, and maybe I might find what that is on this course. Gotcha. I don't know, right? He said, okay, cool, thanks, Karl, and we carried on. At the end of that session, he did an exercise, and he just asked, we all stood up in a line with our eyes closed, and he just said, has anyone been feeling suicidal? Serious stuff. I'd never stood in a room with anyone who'd used the word suicide. He said, if you've been feeling suicidal, stay standing up. And if you haven't felt suicidal in the last 6 months, take a step back. So we all got our eyes closed, because we got no idea who's staying there and who's standing back. So I'm stepping back thinking, oh, you know, and he said, if you felt suicidal in the last month, stay standing in the middle. And if you haven't, take a step back. I'm stuck back. And he said, if you felt suicidal in the last week, stay standing in the middle. And if you haven't, step back. So I took another step back. And he said, now open your eyes. It makes me emotional, this actually. And there was 4 men stood in the middle of the room. I get emotional actually thinking about it. And I realized and I thought, okay, there's more to this. I need to be here, if not just to find what I need to fix in myself, I need to be here for these men to help them in any way I can. And, you know, those men over the next 8 weeks became my brothers, you know, and each week was a different week talking about different parts of our personality and psyche. You know, there was anger, there was guilt and shame, there was the wounds of our father, the masculine wounds of our father. So much emotion, so many places to go to find who we are as men and who we want to be and deal with that. I use the S word, deal with the stuff that you carry and you've carried your whole life and you don't know that you carried it and you've brainwashed yourself that it's not there, right? So it all came out, and in the end I realized that I probably needed it more than all of those guys. That's how it felt, the other guys in the room. So that cracked me open, absolutely like someone just smashing I call it a corporate suit. Yeah. I put a metal, feels like I zipped up a metal corporate suit around me and maintained the personality that I thought people, that I felt I had to be that successful millionaire CEO guy. Yeah, I thought that I would have to act in a certain way to become the person that I wanted to be. Yeah. But when I got to that point, I was still that person, if that makes sense. Yeah. When I'd achieved that goal, yeah. I couldn't take the suit off, and it took that course to crack the suit open and for me to realize who I actually was inside. Yeah. You know, I'm not just the business dude. You know, I don't just talk about business. I've got feelings. You know, I get angry. You know, yeah, I can feel real love. You know, and display love to my kids and other people and everyone now. You know, I can't stop it just pouring out of me. Yeah.
And that was the awakening.
That was part of the awakening journey. Yeah, that's what kicked it off. And during that, I had some other just astoundingly. Almost out of this world spiritual experiences, physical, experiences that just changed the way I look at who I am, who we are as humans, why we're here, and those experiences took me on a journey halfway around the world to learn more about myself and other people and what's actually real. Yeah. And when I came back from that experience, I then realized that I had to start being the authentic self that I am, being authentically me. Yeah. And a big part of that was, since selling my business, I would hide the fact, I would hide my story. Yeah. So I didn't want to appear like a big head or a show-off. Yeah. That was huge for me. So you would talk to me and ask me, so what do you do? What have you done? And I'd say, oh, I used to run a business in the UK and now I'm here doing this. And I would ask you about you. Because I was, I thought I had to be so humble that I didn't want to be judged as a big head or a show-off or a T word or, you know, whatever, C word. Yeah. So I would never talk about it. And part of this course was I realized that I actually have huge experience and value that other people value, and that I could help them, that I could use my experience and knowledge that I've gained on my journey to help them with their life and achieve what they want to achieve or be who they want to be. And me being humble about who I am and not telling people I'm actually not helping all of those people that I could help. Yeah. So that's when it was a big move for me to come out personally and actually call myself, number one, awakened anything, but then to actually use the word millionaire, that was the biggest thing for me, was just to put myself out there and call myself the awakened millionaire. Because I was so fearful of being judged straight away by thousands of people. Oh, who are you? You know, who do you think you are? But I've had none of that. I've had not one negative person be like that with me. Everyone's just been supportive and accepted the help that I want to give them.
So let's tap into that, Karl, like the millionaire part. Okay, so what was your business and how did you make that decision? I know when we first, you mentioned that you and your wife were sipping on the gin and Coke, and then so what was that business idea that sparked your?
Yeah, so at the time I was working for a vehicle rental company, and part of the vehicle rental or the vehicle world in the UK or any country, you have accidents, right? Yeah. And a big part of my role with Enterprise Rent a Car was I created a new service which would support customers that had non-fault road traffic accidents. Mm-hmm. So if you're driving your car and I hit your car in the rear, that accident is my fault, right? Yeah. So you are entitled to a replacement vehicle and to have your vehicle repaired for free because it's not your fault, right? And normally you would claim those costs of your vehicle repair and your vehicle rental and any injury that you had in the accident. You claim those costs, maybe go to a lawyer, or maybe go to the at-fault insurance company's insurance department, and then they would reimburse you for those costs. So with Enterprise Rent a Car, I created a kind of online system. I built it in a few days in Access. Remember Access? Microsoft Access? Yeah. So I went on an Access course. I knew what I wanted, had it all in my head, and I went on a course for 3 days to learn how to build an Access database, and then built this software system for Enterprise Rent a Car in the West Midlands, which managed these vehicle rentals for people that have had non-fault accidents. And that department made £1 million in its first year. I didn't get any of that. Obviously, I was just an employee, but it worked, and the software system that I created managed all of that really well. Okay. And my idea was, I thought, okay, well, I'm working for this, I'm doing this for this service, managing these customers who have non-fault accidents in their cars. Wonder if I could do that on my own, outside of the vehicle rental company, and outsource. So a customer would come to me, I've had an accident, it wasn't my fault, then I would outsource. I would say, don't worry, we'll fix your car for free, we'll give you a brand new replacement car to drive around in until we fixed your car, and we'll put you in touch with a law firm straight away who can help you with whatever claim you may have for your personal injury, and it wouldn't cost them anything. And that was the idea, to be a middleman, an agent, basically, that would then have business partners who were vehicle rental companies, law firms,
just connect them.
And connect them all. Yeah, that was the idea. And tested the water a bit. I probably shouldn't have, the way you do before you leave your job. So I made a few phone calls. Hey, if I did this, would you give me a bit of money? And they said, yes, we would. And I tested it a little bit. And then someone at my work kind of made a phone call to me and said, hey, Karl, did you speak to... I said, oh, yeah, I did, yeah. So, but I knew that there was people out there that would do deals with me. And so I resigned. I resigned in December of 2005. And my wife, Susie, at the time, was living with me in London, and she'd been involved in the 7/7 bombings in 2005. She was in the tube at the time and saw everyone running off the platform and panicking, and then she had to walk home for 6 hours. That was the most stressful day of my life because there was buses being blown up and trains, and I was the risk manager for the whole of the southeast, so my job was to keep people safe along with all the cars and stuff. That was the most stressful day of my life. Full stop. Most stressful, horrible day of my entire working life that day. Trying to get people out of London safely. And anyway, so she came home after that experience and said, I am not going back to work in London on the tube tomorrow. I'm going to move back to the northwest. I'm sorry I'm not going to be with you, but I cannot do that. Who knows if the buses or train's going to get blown up tomorrow or the next day. So I had to deal with the fact that my fiance had moved back to the northwest, which was a 4-hour drive every weekend. And I had this idea for my business, so it just felt like the universe was pushing me to make a decision. So I walked into my boss's office and resigned. I cried when I resigned. Tears were running down my face because I love the company, I love my job, I love the people I work with, but I knew that I had to go and take this new path. So I left with £10,000 in the bank. I'd saved that. We had a small apartment, small flat. I rented the smallest car money could buy. It was like a little cardboard box, £160 a month. I started the business. and I started calling people. It was called iGent. You know when you start a business and you have a great idea and you think, I'll call it a funky name like Sony?
Just to keep it,
Keep it cool, and all that happened, it was supposed to be like an insurance agent, so I called it iGent. But all that happened is I would call people, cold call businesses, because it was business to business. I'd say, hello, my name's Karl from iGent. And before I could even launch into this is what I do, they'd say, what? What? Who? Agent? iGent? What is that? And I had to explain my company name, it means this, insurance agent, and no, they put the phone down. So, but the ones that did talk to me, I basically, the conversation was, hey, listen, I know that you're already doing this for customers. You're already arranging, because I would contact, they're called accident management companies, who are already doing what I was doing. But my idea was, well, I'll take the work off you that you're doing, so make your life easier, so you do less work, and I'll do the work for you, and I'll pay you a little bit more money than what you're doing, but what you're earning at the moment. So the way that worked was, I would go to service providers like a car rental company and agree a deal, say £300 for the referral of a prestige car, like a Mercedes or whatever it was, right? So I'd pass a car to them, a customer to them, they'd give me £300, right, for an email. It was pretty sweet, yeah. So then I'd call these other companies who were only getting paid 200, and I'd say, if you give me your work, I'll give you 250, if that makes sense. And then I'd make 50 or 100 per case. They were happy because they did less work and made more money, and I'd make £100, but I'd be getting more of that work, from that company. So the model was me to kind of be a middleman for the middlemen, if that made sense. Just clipping the ticket all the way along. And that was going okay. We were just, we moved into an office. I employed Kelly, my first ever employee. And I could just barely afford to pay my own salary and Kelly's and pay the rent. We were still effectively paying our mortgages, me and Susie's mortgages. We had 2 flats then on credit cards. So I lived for an entire year of my life, our life, every penny that we lived on, going out with friends, drinking, mortgages, bills, on credit cards. Entire year. Just with the pure belief that this business was going to work.
So was it still iGent during this period, or did you change the name, or did you?
I did iGent for just under a year, and then I made no money. Like literally for the first year, made no money. Probably made £14,000, $30,000 or whatever, and that was just enough just to get us by. It wasn't enough. We were still living on credit cards, and I wasn't making any money because I didn't know how to sell. Looking back, and my father-in-law at the time. Was selling insurance, life insurance. And I said, Dad, I used to call him Dad, still do. I said, I'm bombing here, I'm not making any money. No one wants to work with me. What am I going to do? I need money. And he said, well, you've got some insurance qualifications, haven't you? And I said, yeah. He said, why don't you come and sell life insurance with me? So I'd spent the whole of 2006 trying to launch a business, went nowhere really. Did a few bits and bobs here and there, not making any money. And he said, why don't you come and sell some life insurance with me? So I said, okay, I'll sell life insurance. I needed the money. So I then started to go into people's houses, trying to sell life insurance to people who I didn't know in people's houses, right? And I was awful at that. I felt like a second-hand watch salesman. I would walk in and they'd say, do you want a cup of tea? And I'd say yes, and then I'd just launch into it. I'd say, right, so you're a family of 4, and what you need is I've got 3 different policies, and I'd drop them down. I'd say, this one is probably the best one for you, and I'd go through all the features and benefits of the policies. And in the end, they'd say, no, thanks.
We'll get back to you.
We'll get back to you, leave it with us. And I'd walk out after 2 hours, and I'd make no money, and this would happen. And then my father-in-law said, here, listen to this. And he gave me a tape. Remember cassette tapes? He gave me a cassette tape. And it was called $1 Million Round Table, 1974, or in the 70s. Okay. This was a tape that was made in the 70s. And it was a tape of 3 men, each who'd sold $1 million worth of life insurance, each in the 70s, in that year, the previous year, right? So that was like $10 million now, right? Each of them just selling life insurance. And I put it in my car tape deck and pressed play. And the first guy, I thought, oh, I can't. And they would just say word for word how they sold life insurance, like the words to say. And the first guy, I thought, no, I can't, it's not me. The second guy, I thought, oh, maybe, but it still feels really cheesy and pushy and kind of second-hand car salesman-y, so no. But the third guy, I listened to the whole way he'd sold life insurance, and I thought, yeah, I reckon I could do that, and I reckon I could do it my way.
That's your style. Yeah.
That's my style.
Yeah.
So the next time I went to see a customer in their house, I was tooled up, like I had these words to say, and it wasn't even that hard. Mm-hmm. So I just walked in, same thing happened, do you want a cup of tea? Yes, thank you. And I just said the words in the order that the guy said to say the words, and I sold life insurance. And these human beings in front of me just nodded their heads and said the words that he said that they would say when I said my words, and they bought life insurance. And I made like £2,000 or whatever like that, and walked out thinking, what just happened? And really what I'd learned is an exercise in psychology. He'd cracked some secret code that when you say certain words to someone in a sales environment, they will always react in the same way. Then all you have to do is just keep saying these words and then close in a certain way, and you're going to make money. So in that next year, I made £100,000 from a standing start in 12 months, selling life insurance just in the way that the guy in the 1970s told me to sell. And then after the year of doing this, we were the top brokerage, me and my father-in-law. We were getting awards and doing really well. But I said, listen, Dad, I said, I'll be honest with you, I don't want to sell life insurance. I want to go back and do this. Now I know how to sell. I want to go back and do what really lights me up, what really lights me up. And it would light me up. I would buzz off it, talk like this when I talk about my own business idea, right? Because it was mine. And I went back and I applied that technique to the same industry that said no to me a year before, and everyone started to say yes. And I started to have a business, and then and I started to grow the business. And then I had the idea for my software product to make that business easier.
Yeah, let's go into that, Karl.
Yeah, so in 2006, 2007, this would have been end of 2007, beginning of 2008. And I went to a conference to do with motor accident claims, which is the industry I was in at the time, And I was listening to a guy talk about the value of the industry. He said it was worth 500 million or something like this, annually. And I thought, wow, if I could just get a little bit of all of that, not try and compete with all these guys who are sitting next to me, if I could just maybe somehow make something that the other people would use, if I could just make a little bit every time someone made a bit of that 500 million, even if I got 1% of that, that's be winning. At the same time, I still listened to the same podcast, the Bottom Line podcast, and another guy came on who said something inspirational. And what he said was, he was talking to Evan Davis, and he said, who made all the money? He asked the question, he said, who made all the money in the American gold rush of the 1800s? He asked the question. And Evan said, I don't know, the guy that made the most money from gold, that dug the most gold. He said, no, it was the guy that made the spades, right? Yeah. And I was in my car again thinking, okay, I need to make something that everyone else in this industry is going to use. And it's going to make their life easier, it's going to make them more money, or it's going to save them time. And if I can do that, I'm going to make a bit of money along the way. So in that claims conference, all this kind of came together, and I just scribbled on a piece of paper, which I still have in the garage, the original scribble, and it was just some boxes of a central point which connected all of the businesses involved in a road traffic accident. So the vehicle rental company, the garage, the engineer, the law firm, and the insurance company. And me, and I thought, why don't I, and those companies that would send me work. And I thought, and it would have to be a software system, but I'd never built a software system before, but I knew what I wanted in my head. So I went and found a software company, and it took 6 months to get all of that information out of my head. And after 6 months, I managed to find some European funding. There was some European funding at the time, and I managed to get hold of upwards of $100,000 free from Europe. They just were giving money to businesses in the Merseyside in the UK at the time to help with development. And I managed to get $100,000 free in the space of 6 months. And a year later, my software product was finished.
Wow. So and so did you have buyers from there on in, or did you? How did you sell it?
So what happened was the software product is along the way in the year that it took to build, I would talk to my business partners, people I was working with, and I was saying, hey, you know the way you got to send over a fax at the moment, because we had faxes then, or an email, and you got to type the information into your computer, and then you send it to me, and then we have to type it into our computer, and then we send it to the lawyer, and they have to type it into their computer, and then the insurance company gets it, and they've got to type it in again, and then when you invoice me, you send an invoice, I've got to type that in, and then to pay you, I've got to do something else, and there was just duplication of data, 5-6 times just through one process to deal with one customer. All these people everywhere typing in the same data over and over again, right? All that time and money. So what my system did was it meant that someone could get hold of a client here, click a button that would send the information to my system. They could select which law firm, which vehicle rental company they wanted to use, which engineer, whatever it was. And it was all automated by my system, which connected to all of the service providers who all logged into the same system. So Mr. Smith here, customer, could go to one company, he could click a button and that data would come in, and then it would automatically be sent to all of the companies involved in that one case.
In one hub,
In one hub. Everyone was in the one space at the same time with the same data, which saved time and helped people make money faster. So I would be telling people about this. I'd be saying, hey, in about 6 months' time, you won't have to use that fax anymore. You'll be able to log into your portal, enter the client's details once, and then just communicate with all those people in your supply chain, in my supply chain, because it was a closed supply chain network. And they would say, this is great, this is great. But then what they said was, that sounds great, but I don't want to just be the person supplying the work. I want a system like that for my business as well, if that makes sense, a complete business management system for an accident management company. So in the end, I realized that there was thousands of other businesses out there who would use my software to manage their business, as well as send customers to my supply chain.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I thought, right, and at the time you couldn't buy a software product like that for less than £10,000, right? There just wasn't one that did what my software did. It was the first software product of its type for that industry. So I had the idea to give away, when it launched, I gave away the software product, a bit like, I guess like a Microsoft Outlook it was. It managed everything for that business, but for that particular industry, I gave it away for free. So what I said was, I'm going to give you this bit of kit, this bit of software, which is going to totally manage every part of your business, save you time, make you more money than you've ever made before. All you have to do is turn it on, and you'll save time and make more money with the deals that I've done with my network than you've ever made before. And they'd say, what's the catch? I say, it's nothing. All you have to do is agree that when you have a customer, you just send them to my supply chain. And when you use them, they'll pay you more money than what you're getting from your existing supply chain, right? So you get the picture? Gotcha. So they got free software, and every time they turned it on, they'd make more money and get better service than they ever had before. And that was the deal. That was the hook. So then everyone said yes, because our sales call was, hi, my name's Karl from Intelligent Claims Management. I'd like to talk to you about making more money in less time with no cost.
What a pitch.
And they just say, cool, let's talk. So yeah, that's what happened. And then we launched it on the 10th of September 2009 to about 30 different companies. In the end, after 3 years, we had about 200 companies on board. 12 of the biggest law firms in the country were on our panel. 6 of the largest vehicle rental companies in the country were on our panel, along with some bespoke other companies that could provide high-end cars like Ferraris and BMW and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, within 3 years, it had turned into the biggest insurance claims network that the UK had ever seen. Yeah, there was thousands of transactions going through my software system with annual revenues of over $200 million.
Shucks. Wow. Wow, Karl. So did you get acquired then, or did you?
Yeah, so what happened was, the law was the law in the UK, the powers that be decided that they were going to regulate this industry even further in an attempt to drive out fraudulent claims and increased insurance premium costs because of that industry. So everyone knew that these changes were coming, and the only way that we were going to survive in this industry, that we were all going to survive, was if you either became, it's called an ABS, I can't remember what that stood for, but basically I would have to turn my business into a law firm in order to survive. So I started to go and meet law firms, because what would happen is the easiest way to do that was to go and merge with a law firm that already had a license. So I went to meet law firms, and I would be honest, and I'd say, hey guys, I run this network, it's a big network, right? Transacting lots of, millions and millions of dollars worth of revenue every day. And I need to merge with a law firm to survive. And I went, and I'd had meetings with a number of firms. Some had said, no, thank you, that's not what we want. But one firm in Liverpool, who I'd met months before and then just never got back to me. Funny story, we'd come to Perth, Australia, because my brother lives here. This is at the beginning of 2012. We'd come on holiday, and my wife and I, Susie, were on Cottesloe Beach on our last night. My mum was looking after the kids, and we were having a sip of champagne on the beach. And Susie had said, oh, wouldn't it be amazing if we could come and live here one day? And I said, well, geez, that's a tall order, because number one, I'm not on the visa list of hairdressers or this or that. I'm coming to the age where, they're not going to let me in after age 45. But in order for this to happen, we'd have to go home. I'd have to somehow find someone to buy my business, and then I'd have to somehow get a visa to come out, right? But it's a big ask, but I promise you, I'll try. The next day, we flew home, and there was a letter. I kid you not, we walked through our door, there's a letter on the floor at home, and it was from that law firm that I'd met 3 months ago and heard nothing from. I opened the letter, not even unpacked the suitcases from the car, and it said, Dear Karl, you may have seen recently in the press, which I hadn't, that they've been acquired by a large PLC, public limited, limited by shares, so a listed company. And so we're now the biggest law firm in the country. And we'd be interested in talking to you about acquiring your business. Wow. I literally read it and went, we only had the conversation yesterday. Yeah. And then today, the universe just delivered this letter. Wow. And then I had to go on some Dragon's Den type interviews. I was grilled by the head investment guy who grills all of the acquisitions for this company. Got past that. And then I had an interview with the head of this PLC, a guy called Rob Terry, who at the time I was told, I knew was worth £390 million. And he interviewed me on his golf course, private golf course. And he approached me. He'd seen a video that I'd made, about my business and how it was the fastest growing network in the country and all this stuff. And he liked the video. And he told me in the interview that, he said, I saw your video and I thought, why aren't we doing that? We're a multi-million-dollar company. Why haven't we got a video like yours? So he said, you treat my interest. And then he looked at what my business was doing. So he invited me in. So yeah, I had a conversation in front of him, his lawyer, his accountant. And he said, I want to buy your business. I think it's worth so many millions. And I said, no, it's worth more. He said, no, it's not. It's worth this, right? Let's be honest here. It's worth this, which was I was happy with that number anyway, but I tried to push it for more. And he said, what do you think you can do in the next year? Because we had to hit big targets. It was a share-only acquisition, which means that they give you, if you're successful and you hit your targets, they give you shares, lots of shares in the bigger PLC, and then as that PLC grows, the share price is supposed to increase. There's risks, obviously, and then obviously then your value, your net worth of those shares increases until you sell them and cash out. So it was a big target. He said, set your own target. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, if you set your target, so can you do, at the time it was, I had to put an amount of money cash in my bank after tax at the end of a 12-month period. He said, can you do £300,000, so about $600,000 cash after tax in the bank, cash.
From the business?
From a standing start in 12 months. Wow. Now, my business hadn't done, The most it had done in any year of trading was 50,000, right? So he was asking me to do 6 times more profit, cash in the bank within 12 months of a standing start, right? And if I did that, he would give me 6.5 times that in the value of shares at that time, right? So it was very numbers and shares and everything. So I thought about it and I said, well, I said, okay, so what if I don't hit that number? He said, well, okay, if you hit the number, we give you all the shares, right? And then whatever the share price is, as it grows, you get that. I said, okay, so it's based on the number of shares versus profit. He said, yeah. I said, okay, so what if I don't hit that number? He said, well, let's say you hit it halfway. That wouldn't be good because we have to say you're going to hit these numbers to the stock market, and if you don't hit them, it's not good. But if you don't do it, you only get half the shares. I said, okay, so if I shoot for a higher number than that, you're going to give me more shares. He went, yeah, but you're going to have to hit the target. So in my head, I thought, in this room, in this pressurized environment, I thought, quick calculation, hang on a minute. So what you're telling me here is, if I shoot higher and hit the target, I get more money. He said, yeah, that's right. So I said, okay, I'll do £500,000. I'll do £500,000, so another 200,000 on top. I'll put $1 million cash in the bank after tax within 12 months from a standing start, right? And he said, okay, but you're going to have to do it. I said, okay, I'll do it, right? Because I figured this is my one chance in life. My one chance in life. If I do this, I'm set for life. If I don't do it, or even if I get halfway, I'm still set. But there's a chance I could do it. And then we left the room, and I drove out of. I remember getting in my car. I remember leaving the room and being, because that's serious, right? This is a serious meeting for me. This is the biggest moment of my life. So I didn't want to appear like, oh, this is just all my business. Still had a lot of work to do. So I walked out through, must have been 100 staff through the office, got in my car, still with no emotion, drove down the long driveway of the golf course to the big gates that opened in front of me, and I was still aware of cameras looking at me. And as soon as I got out of the gate onto the road, I just exploded. I screamed, and cried, and the emotion, and I must have screamed and cried for 15 minutes non-stop, just because it wasn't the money, it wasn't the fact that I'd achieved my goal. It was, honestly, it was the feeling that the belief that I'd had in myself for 20 years that this was going to happen had come true. That was the feeling of, oh, I always knew this was going to happen, and I did it, right? It wasn't about the money or anything, the emotion just poured out of me. And as I left the room, I got told this later, a year later actually, we were at Black Tie Ball. I'll tell you about how it all went, but we were at a Black Tie Ball a year later, everything had gone well. And the head of revenue for this company leaned over and said, Karl, can I tell you a little story? I said, yeah. He said, when you walked out of that room, I said to Rob, why are you buying that guy's business? That's the smallest acquisition that we've ever made. Because they used to do like £50 million acquisitions, right, with big companies. He said, why would you do that, Rob? Why would you buy his business? And Rob said to me, he said, you watch that guy. It makes me emotional, actually. It makes me emotional. He said, you watch that guy. He said, because that guy needs it. That guy wants it. You watch what he's going to do, you know. Wow. I ended up doing almost double the target, yeah, in 12 months from a standing start, yeah.
So the process, so you hit the target, you doubled the target, from the stand, completely owned it, and then they acquired you from there on in, and then...
Yeah, so the deal was, because of that, because I smashed the targets, they gave me 27 million shares in the larger PLC. But I wasn't allowed to sell all that. I couldn't just leave straight away, because if you dump that amount of money on the stock market, straight, you know, it could affect the share price. So I was locked into a share deal where I could only take out a third over 3 years. So I stayed with the company. That happened in the April or May of 2013. So I stayed with the company as CEO of that part of the company, the bigger company. And the second that I crossed the point where I could release shares, I resigned, went into Rob's room and said, I'm going to go. I'm going to resign. I worked 20 years to get to a point. My goal was to not work. It wasn't to be a big CEO and continue business. My goal was to just stop working. And if I'm honest, I hadn't thought about what I was going to do, but that was my goal. Yeah. So as soon as it hit it, I had to resign. So I resigned. I had a great job, lovely car. You know, they offered me a job in Australia. They said, come and work for us out there. I said, nah, I'm done. And left in January of 2014. Wow. moved my family and 3 kids to Perth, Australia.
Wow. Karl, talk to me for entrepreneurs who are watching this. Obviously, during that time where they gave you the goal and you said 1 million, I'm going to hit this target of 1 million, right? Was there ever a time where you had limiting beliefs of that? You know, that way we can pull the human side and they can connect you on that, say, hey, look, Karl's not this super million guy. There were times where I was testing.
Oh, listen. Yeah, listen. Honestly, you know, and I teach this now, like, my experience in business wasn't this. Yeah. You know, it was hard. You know, like 1 year great, the next year, I don't want to paint the picture like I just started a business and everything, you know, everything turned to roses. Yeah. So I started a business and it was hard. People said no to me. I was laughed out of boardrooms of law firms. This will never work. Who do you think you are coming into this industry and telling me you're going to change it? Get out. Literally laughed out of boardrooms. I started a business. I employed, someone who was very close to me, a good friend, and I had the experience which many entrepreneurs do, where I was stabbed in the back. So someone started a separate company behind my back, was talking to my suppliers, talking to my customers. It could have ended my business. So I had to deal with that. That ended up in a court case almost. We managed to settle before it didn't, but. So betrayal, you hear that a lot with people that have done anything in business. It's a normal thing that happens. So I suffered that. That was very emotionally hard for me. That was 2009, I think, maybe 2008, 2009.
And you're still building this, obviously.
I was trying to grow a business, trying to pay staff, trying to live, and with massive overdraft at the bank, and then to hear that someone that you trusted had done that to you. Yeah. Obviously, he had his reasons at the time, and I wish him well now, because in the end, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I learned a lot of lessons, and I don't hold a grudge, but I went through that. We went through that. I've had law firms owe me £100,000 and just say, we're not paying you because, And £100,000 at that time could have put me under. We had to get through that. I had to sue a law firm to get the money that they owed me. So these are huge numbers. So that could have put me under. And that was still going on at the point where I sold my business. I went into business with law firms. I would say, I'm going to be rock solid here because law firms are the most trustworthy people on the planet. They're lawyers, right? No, they just know how not to pay you. And get away with it. I learned a lot of lessons along the way. I was involved, my business was involved, involved in one of the biggest insurance fraud cases that the UK had ever seen, part of it anyway. I helped us to solve that case. We had one client that was basically stealing information out of the back of an insurance company and selling it to our panel members, to our lawyers and our vehicle rental companies. And I was approached by the senior investigator from the ICO, the Information Commissioner's Office in the UK. So it's a big deal because they tracked this guy that he was doing business with us. And we didn't know because he was just using our software to send cases to our suppliers. We weren't involved in a direct relationship other than knowing he was a user of our software. So because we had all the data, from our software system, we opened all of that and we were able to give all of the data down to every case, dates, times, clicks, everything. And that helped to, I don't actually know if it was ever convicted, but that helped the ICO to deal with that case. So I was proud to be able to be a part of that solution, So, but that was worrying at the time, what are you telling me? What? Who are you? What's going on? And oh no, how is this going to affect me and my brand? But everyone was supportive at the time, and so I don't want to appear like life was easy like this. It was hard, up and down, up and down, up and down. Good times, bad times. Hard times, but then in that period of that target hitting period, to talk about that specifically. So I knew that these law changes were coming along, and part of my conversation after I'd done the deal in that meeting, I asked the other guys to leave. I said, gentlemen, would you mind if I had a private one-on-one conversation with Rob, the owner of the business? And they said, yeah, sure, Karl, and they left the room. And I stayed behind and I said, listen, I said, in order for me, I said, I'm going to be honest with you here. I'm always honest, right? In order for me to hit the numbers that you need me to hit, I'm going to have to say goodbye to every single customer that I have at the moment. I'm going to have to literally go away and find huge clients. That's the only way I'm going to do what I've just promised I'm going to do. But I have an idea. And he said, okay, tell me. He said, okay, all right, I'm with you. And I said, these law changes are coming. And there's all the businesses, no matter how big you are scared of what's going to happen to their business as a result of these legal changes that are coming up in 8 months, a year's time. So I'm going to go and paint a picture like we, because I've been acquired at that point, are the Noah's Ark. We are the Noah's Ark
The saviors of,
in the storm that is coming for the entire motor accident legal industry, right? He went, okay, tell me more. I said, I'm going to approach the biggest companies in our industry who would have never worked with us in the past, and I'm going to paint a picture, which is true, that their business and their livelihoods could be over unless they join us and join our family. And because we're a big PLC, we're going to protect them, right? And he went, okay, go for it, like that. So that's what I did. The next day, I went and talked to my sales team, had about 3 guys, had a meeting, and forgot everyone in actually, and I said, okay, from tomorrow, you're not going to talk to any one of our existing clients. You're not going to go make them a cup of tea, you're not going to drop in and say hi. No. If they ask you, they can still send work through if they want to, but you're not going to waste any more of your time managing our 200 customers that we have. Because they are not going to help us achieve our goals. And if we don't achieve our goal, we're all out of a job. I don't get what I need. I said, what I did before the deal is I put everyone that was on a commission deal with me, with my business, I doubled their commission before I signed the deal with the company. Okay. So what I said is, guys, I've just doubled your commission. So if we hit our targets, you're going to go from £30,000 a year to 60 overnight, right? And more.
Incentivize them.
And more if we hit these targets. So I told everyone that, right? I said, so knowing that, just say goodbye to every customer you've ever known. And I only want you to come to me with customers who do a minimum of 500 or 1,000 units or claims or whatever it was a month. If they don't do that, walk away. They went, okay, boss, all right, no worries, like that. And we did this for 6 months and made no money, right? So we're on month 5 of a 12-month cycle, and I was sitting with my uncle. My uncle used to run a small body shop. He used to fix cars, very skilled body shop. He could, all the old Porsches would be sent to him and everything. He's a really beautiful eye for fixing sports cars. And I would sit with him in his old chair in his small garage, and I'd sit with him, my uncle, my dad's twin, my best friend in the UK actually. And we'd sit and have a cup of coffee, and he'd give me a cup of tea, and he'd give me a biscuit. And he said, so how are you going with your targets, these big targets? And I said, honestly, I've got 0 money in the bank, 0, and I've got to put $1 million in the bank in 6 months, cash after tax, collected. And he said, how are you going to do it? And I said, well, number one, I'm going to have to not rely on my sales team to bring in these, because they're not doing it. I've allowed them to do that for 6 months. I'm going to have to do it myself. He said, you watch me go. I said, if I don't do it, it's all over, everything. Lose the house, lose the car, business gone, right? I said, okay, cool. And the next day I just started phoning. I phoned everyone I knew, okay. Right? So I phoned everyone I knew, everyone I'd ever met in business, anyone in my industry, I phoned them. And I said, hello, you know me, and maybe I've only met you twice, right? This is where I'm at. I've got to hit a huge target in 6 months' time. If you can introduce me to this particular type of target client, only this, nothing else, if you know anyone who's in that space and you introduce them to me, just an introduction, and I do business with them and it works out, I will give you 10% of the profit from that deal for life, right? And I had the same conversation with everyone. Yeah. And we're talking about lots of money here. I mean, numbers in the millions of pounds, right, in revenues. These people would be on good money. And I just put it out there, phoned everyone. Yeah. And one guy, I won't give his name, right, because I don't want to embarrass him, who I used to meet every now and again for lunch, because we just got on. He worked for a big law firm in the fraud department, and we just got on. And when I called him, he said, I've just lost my job. So I said, okay, I'll come over and have a cup of tea with you, you know? And went over, had a cup of tea with him, and I said the same thing. I said, if you know anyone in this space, I'll give you a hell of a return, because I have to, right? I was honest. Yeah. So what I was now I know what I was doing was I was inviting joint venture partnerships. I was inviting introducers to introduce me based on joint venture partnership agreements. That's what I call it now. Yeah. And the next day he phoned me. He said, Karl, it's me. Remember me from yesterday, the cup of tea? I said, yeah. He said, I've got a company for you. And they're in your ballpark. In fact, they're way bigger than what you want, right? Than what you think you need. I said, okay. He said, can you meet them on Monday? I said, yeah, sure. So he brought in these two guys who he'd known for years. And I'd never heard of them. Never heard of this company, which was strange because I knew most companies in the industry. It was a pretty small industry. And these two guys came into my office and I was with my supply chain manager, Johnny. He's one of my best friends, brothers, lovely guy. We did this together. And we had this meeting with these guys and I painted the picture. And I said, so guys, tell me about your business. And it was huge. I said, how are you feeling about the legal changes that are coming up in the X number of months? And they said, well, we're scared. And all I did was ask them about them and what they wanted and what was important to them. And I learned that they had 100 employees who all had families and kids and mortgages and a call center, and that they had families and holiday homes and all that. And I just dug into what was actually important to them. And guess what? What was important to them is that life and them being able to take care of their 100 employees and their families was the most important thing to them. They wanted to maintain their business through these legal changes. And I said, every bone in my body wanted to just give them everything and say, well, please come and work with us. And I said, okay, guys, I'll be honest with you. You might be too big for us.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
You might be too big for us, you know? But if you want, I can see, I can talk to the CEO of the law company. I can see if we could maybe talk about maybe bringing you on. See if we could take it. But even if we do, it's going to be a small sample of your work first, and then I'm not sure if we're going to be able to take the rest, you know, but do you want to see if I can help you? And they said, yes, please, Karl, please, can you help us? Yeah, I want that. So, of course, they walked out the room, and, you know, me and Johnny, we just did a lap of the room, like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And we had the meeting, and I maintained the stance of the Noah's Ark, you know, all the way through. You know, never appeared desperate, even though I was, clearly. And ultimately, we did the right deal, and because the right deal was for them to move all of their work into our PLC, for them, because it did give them safety. But I played it in the right way, respect, integrity, and got to the core of what they needed. And we did the deal, and within 2 months, they were sending us all of their work, right? So this is now, we're on month 8 of the 12 month. And these huge numbers start to come in. I'm talking millions and millions of dollars of revenue, like straight away, right? From the volume of cases that these people started to put through. And along the way, after I closed that one, within that 2 months, I closed another 2 big deals. Nowhere near as big as the big one, but another 2 that bolted on the last quarter of the work. And a couple of weeks after doing the deal, and this work started to pour in, the head of revenue for the PLC called me. I remember I was in my car driving home, and I knew the deal was big, but he called me, he was laughing, he said, Karl, he said, do you know, we said, good job on the name of the company deal, good job on the thingy deal, well done, you know. That's so many cases, right? I said, yeah, it's a couple of thousand cases, you know, and yeah. He said, good job. He said, even managing that, you know, and everything you've done, we had to manage hundreds of people to be able to cope with the volume of work. This wasn't just people shaking hands. This is changing a law firm's policies. This is having a new call center put in place just for this company. It's a huge machine that had to happen to make all this work, right? Yeah. And he said, are you aware of what that deal's worth to the company, to our company that, you know, that you're a part of now? And I said, well, it's probably worth a lot, isn't it? He said, it's worth about £70 million a year. It's about $140 million a year. A year. And I said, wow, I didn't know it was that much. I knew it was a lot, but I didn't know it was that much. He said, yeah. He said, when you combine all of the services that we provide and the average revenue per case, he said, yeah, it's worth about £70 million a year. He said, do you know what that means, Karl? And I'm driving my car. I'm like, no, what does that mean, Rob? He said, the deal that you've just done is the biggest insurance claims deal in history in the UK. He said, no insurance company provides that much work or revenue to any law firm or any company anywhere in the UK. The deal that you've just done is the biggest deal ever done in our space. So I was like, cool, that's cool, right? That's cool. And because of that deal, with the revenue that we got, it was right up to the minute, but with the revenue that we got with accounting afterwards, we smashed it. We smashed it, yeah. That deal and the other two that we got along the way as well. So that one was worth about 140 million, and the other two deals brought in the extra maybe 50 million or whatever it was a year in revenue. Yeah.
Crazy. Wow. Okay, Carl. Really just want to go into two questions. Just feeding off that is, for obviously there's many entrepreneurs out there that have the fear of failure, right? Yeah. Did you ever come across the fear of success? Having come, from nothing, what's the fear of success ever?
No, I never had a fear of success.
Never had a fear of success.
No, so from when I was 21, I wouldn't say it was 18, but when I was 21, I remember it was my mum's 40th birthday party. And we were standing outside, and I was in a lot of debt. I never feared debt. I was never scared of debt. To me, debt was just a necessary thing that I had to do to get to where I wanted to be. So I've never been scared of debt. I would borrow, I'm not saying you should. My advice to anyone would be is if you can avoid debt, avoid it, right? But often in business, the only way to grow is debt, right?
Leveraging other people's
yeah. So whenever I would come across a decision which was right for the business, I would take it regardless if I had to go into further debt, because it was the right decision for the business. So at that moment with my mom, she said, Carl, aren't you worried about all this debt? I was 18 with I don't know how much it was, £10,000 worth of debt, whatever, no, sorry, 21. And I said, no, Mum, because one day I know it all will not matter, because I'll just pay it all off, because I'm going to be a millionaire one day. She said, how do you know? I said, I just know. And I always just knew, and I get a buzz in my head now, and I just always knew I was going to be a millionaire. For instance, even in our 20s, Susie would look at our friends' houses. They had big mortgages and lovely houses, and we were still in a small flat. And she'd say, oh, baby, one day I'd love a house like this. And I said, I understand how you feel, but don't worry, you trust me, don't you? I said, you trust me? And she said, yeah, I trust you, darling. I trust you, baby. I said, because one day I'm going to sell my business and we're going to buy our house cash, which we did, But it took time. So I was never scared of success. I wasn't scared of failure, because I understood black and white. For me, if you don't do this, I know what's not going to happen. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's always been my driver. And I've learned recently from not working, for what it's worth, when I sold my business and I didn't have to work, and I tried it. I tried not working, not running any business, or not having any purpose or goal or challenge. And that got really boring and actually quite sad really quickly. And I learned that, here's the thing, right? There's a philosopher called Alan Watts. Ever heard of Alan Watts? Yeah. Right, Alan Watts, born in 1919, died in 1973. And I hadn't listened to his stuff until this year. But one of the lessons that I learned as part of being the Awakened Millionaire is that when I sold my business, I thought that my goal was to do nothing. So I tried to do nothing. And then when I look back, I realized that it wasn't the money which was why I was doing it, which is what I buzzed off, which is what I enjoyed the most. It was the challenges and the problems and the ability to overcome those challenges and problems that actually brought happiness. Right.
Yeah, I get you.
Yeah. So now I talk to people, the way Alan Watts puts it in the 1970s was, and it goes back to Hinduism, and what he says is, if you're playing a game of chess, the best way I can describe it, the way he describes it, if me and you are playing a game of chess, and we play every Tuesday, right, and you always win, I lose interest in the game, right? And if you always win, you lose interest in the game too, right? But if we play, and some weeks you win, and some weeks I win, and we don't know if either of us is going to win, then the game's interesting, right? It's exciting, right? And I think people in business look at the problems that they're going to have ahead in a negative way, like, oh, but it's full of problems, and they worry about, well, what if this happens and then this won't work and everything. But the way you should look at it, and the way I look at it now, because I got back into business, not for the money, I got back into business to have those problems, to have those challenges, because they're the best bits.
It's exciting.
They're the best bits. money at the end of it will come as long as you know where you want to go and you have a good product and service and you plan for it. But the best bits are the overcoming the problems, the challenges. The best bits are climbing the mountain. You know, like Mount Everest?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, they're the best bits, right? It's getting across that gorge with the ladder and you could fall. Yeah. That's what makes you feel alive. Like when I left my job for the first time and I woke up the next morning, I had that kind of feeling, which I think all entrepreneurs have when they start a new business, especially when they leave the job and they don't have an income. It's that kind of like hungry wolf feeling, like, I've got to go and kill something and eat it to survive, right? What am I going to do, right? And people, I think, misinterpret that feeling that they get when they have problems and challenges as fear and anxiety. And what happens physically is that they physically will go, oh no, I've got these problems, and they see them, and they'll put their head down, their shoulders will close out. But what you need to do is realize that that energy is the same energy as feeling alive, man. Yeah. So you can turn those feelings or that apprehensive feeling of problems and the fear of failure into, oh, this is what it's all about.
To the right vibration.
That's what it is, mate, yeah. And if you can, when this is looking back, I was there too. That's what I try and help people with now. If you can, separate the money. If you can separate the money out from what you do every day, like, right, if you can separate it out, if you're able to just separate it out for 1 second, then you can truly enjoy solving that problem, because there's no money attached to the end of it. Normally, it's I need to solve a problem to get the money. Take the money away and just enjoy solving the problem, using your brain, talking to people, overcoming the challenge. If you can separate the money, which is a difficult thing for people to do, I understand. But fortunately, I was able to experience not having to think about the money when I got back into business. So now when I do what I do, it's because it lights me up. It lights up my soul. And the money comes because I'm doing what I do, enjoying it, and other people find value in that.
Beautiful. I'm just gonna lead into a game. Karl, I've got a couple more questions, but I'm gonna lead into a game. And the game is very simple. All right, I'm going to throw you a couple of words, and all you have to do is just throw what that word means back to me. What this word means. Okay. So first word, the only rules of the game is you can't repeat the same word. So we'll go with first word. Family.
Love.
Challenges.
Necessary.
Let's try it. Awakened.
Awakened. Astounding.
Fulfillment.
Connection.
Money.
One word. In one word. Money.
Money or phrase.
All right. Does not bring happiness.
And the last word. Ready? Legacy.
Important.
Karl, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey guys, thanks so much for enjoying this episode of Fan of the Brand. As always, I just want to remind you just to smash that subscribe button right now and hit the notification bell, because we have some of the most unbelievable and inspiring interviews coming up very, very soon, and I wouldn't want you guys to miss out. And also, if you are someone with passion, someone with purpose, and someone with a goal who's looking to level up your network and your net worth, then you're in luck. Because if you check the description below, you can trial our Millionaire Masterclass membership for $7 for the next 30 days, where you'll get millionaire strategies and advice from our millionaire guests, and also be part of a community of action takers and like-minded entrepreneurs from around the world who are on a mission to build a life of success and significance for themselves and their families. Want to find out more? Simply click the link below and join the membership for 30 days as a trial for $7. Looking forward to seeing you either there or on the next video of Fan of the Brand.